joke around at the beginning. We just can't be touching each other.
Welcome to Cornerstone Home Inspector Education Center. Tonight we have Stan Bajerski talking about general safety for residential garages. I will hand it over to Stan.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to talk about safety regarding garages. We're going to break it up into 4 topics: general garage safety, garage fire safety, electrical safety, and garage bay door safety. So by definition, the garage is a building for housing a motor vehicle or vehicles. And those pictures, obviously, those are pretty expensive cars, and that basement or garage looks like a home. Next one, Jim. But these are the kind that we typically see, right? At least for me, I break all my garages down into these 3 categories, right? We have the detached, we have the attached garage, and I call that type on the bottom tucked under. So it's actually part of the footprint of the home with living space over it. The garage is an asset and a liability. It is an asset to a homeowner for many reasons. However, it is one of the biggest potential liabilities that a homeowner possesses. Vehicles can leak oil and gas. Gas containing tools and appliances stored in the garage can leak. Flammable liquids can be stored there as well. And if a heating system or water heater is installed in the garage, the receipt for disaster is present because all these things are flammable.
Excuse me. Everybody needs to mute their microphones, if you would. Thank you.
With detached garages, while safety concerns such as the one described exist in all garages, they are the most of most concern in garages that are attached to or tucked under the house you live in. If certain barriers are not in place, a fire that starts in the garage can spread through the house. So 3 times in the 37 years that I lived in Milford, Connecticut, I've driven by houses that look like this, where the garage, it was clear that it had a fire. And in those 3 cases, it looked like there was something in place that contained that fire and did not let it spread to the house. So when everything's in place, it will work. Okay, Jim.
Dan, I've just interrupted. We just had a fire last month in Cromwell, and I know the gentleman. He has an attached garage. It's right next to the house to the right. It's a Colonial. And the fire department found out that the lawnmower caught on fire after he used it. And house is uninhabitable for 6 months.
Because there was no barrier?
There was a barrier, but even with the barrier, it was a lot of smoke damage, a lot of water damage.
Okay. Well, it's a fire barrier, not a smoke barrier or
Right.
water barrier.
Right.
So.
He didn't lose the house, but it was tough.
So there are minimum code requirements for residential garages, and I always like to make sure people know that we don't do code inspections. I know I try not to say that C word too many times. And municipalities and can have variations on all these things. So these are just for general knowledge as far as this webinar is concerned. So an attached roofed area for vehicle storage must be open on at least 2 sides to be defined as a carport. If it is enclosed on 3 sides, even if there's no garage door on the 4th side, it must comply with code requirements for garage. Garage floor surface must be approved non-combustible material. A garage floor must be sloped towards the vehicle entry door to facilitate the drainage of liquids. An automatic garage door is not required, but if installed, must be listed and labeled for UL 325. A garage cannot be used as a path for emergency egress from a home, and a bedroom door cannot open onto a garage. A garage must have at least 1 GFCI protected receptacle outlet at each vehicle bay. I can tell you right now, I don't see that very often. The wall between an attached garage and the house living area is required to be minimum 1/2 inch drywall. Most garages have a ceiling secured to the bottom cord of the roof trusses or rafters, and that has to be 1/2 inch drywall also. If there is no ceiling, and the roof structure is exposed in the garage, then the wall separating the garage from the dwelling must extend up to the underside of the roof sheathing. If there are habitable rooms above the garage, then the garage ceiling covering must be minimum 5/8 type X drywall or equivalent. Door between garage and house must be solid wood, if not solid wood or steel honeycomb, and at least 1 3/8 inch thick. Then it must have a 20-minute fire rating. Cutting a hole in the door to install a pet door flap voids the 20-minute rating. Also, installing a steel door with a glass panel in it also voids the rating unless the glass is fire rated too, which is obtainable but very expensive. The service door between the attached garage and the house must be self-closing as a protection against fire. You can add a self-closing hinge or door closer to the door to make it self-closing. If you choose to use self-closing hinges, you will need to replace 2 of the existing hinges with self-closing hinges. If you prefer to use a door closer, you can mount it on either side of the door. Any heating, air conditioning ducts that serve the residents cannot also have registered in the garage.
So no venting of air conditioning or heat, no forced air through a garage,
Correct.
unless it can be encapsulated in the sheetrock though.
You can't
If
have
it's in the ceiling.
You can't have the opening because if there's a fire in that garage,
Oh,
even
so
though-
no ducts. Okay.
right.
and that's
The other thing,
Oh, go ahead.
I got one more question too. Where it said the egress, you can't use. Hold on a second. A garage must have the wall. Oh, okay. Never mind. I thought you can't use it as a garage as an egress, as an emergency egress.
Emergency egress, you're supposed to be able to get out of the room or the house, right?
Right. Okay.
They don't want you opening into another part of the house. So,
All right.
Right.
Gotcha.
so
Okay.
here's another thing on what Stan said. I just did a fairly new condo, 2016, and in the garage there were 2 vents that they added, heat vents, and then they had with these electric cars, they had the charger in the back. So clearly, you know, they're saying that if it's really cold, they don't charge well. So that was put in afterwards. That wasn't part of the original construction, which was wrong.
I see people do that a lot because they're doing something in the garage even in the wintertime, whether they're woodworking or whatever, and they try to get a little bit of heat in there. And so they cut a register into a duct that's passing through, and it's usually homeowner or aftermarket kind of stuff. But all right, Jim.
On that too, Stan, flex duct. You know, I mean, I don't know. You know, it talks about the type of ductwork running through the garage, but you'll see guys that'll run flex. I don't know if you.
Yeah, we're going to get into some of that down the line here. So the garage, like Rodney Dangerfield, does not get any respect from the standards of practice. If you look at, to me, it should be a standalone. It should be addressed as a standalone component of the home. That's the way I feel. So the Connecticut standards, which I am most familiar with, on interior, it says the inspector shall inspect all the interior stuff. And then at the end, they throw in garage doors and garage door operators. They don't say anything about safeties or anything like that. They leave that open to interpretation as far as I'm concerned. So our standards were meant to kind of get us all to do a minimum of the same things, but then it also opens everything up to interpretation to the individual home inspector. In Massachusetts, they go farther. So on their exterior, the inspector shall observe and report on, at the end there, garage doors if the garage is attached to the main dwelling. And then operate garage doors if the garage is attached to the main dwelling, manually or by using permanently installed controls of any garage door operator. Report whether or not any garage door operator will automatically reverse or stop when meeting resistance during closing. Now, that's what should be in Connecticut's, in my opinion. But look at exclusion 6 down there. Outbuildings and detached garages are excluded. What is the difference between a detached garage and an attached garage? Why? And most standards are like that. Why do we not have to, at least to the standards, inspect an attached garage the same way we would, or detached garage the same way we would do an attached garage. Okay, Jim. So Rhode Island, exterior garage doors. That's it. And then down on interior, separation walls, ceilings, and doors between dwelling unit and an attached garage or another dwelling unit. So at least they go a little further there. Florida, interior components, they include the garage door, and Jersey, garage doors, including automatic door openers and entrapment protection mechanisms, including remote control devices. So even though the standards are kind of thin and don't get into a lot of detail, because most inspectors are using some kind of inspection program now, software. We all know, if you're using those, that they come through with a lot of stuff. And I had to take a lot of stuff that I didn't want to use out of my report. But at least all the things that we're supposed to be looking at, or should be looking at, I should say, are in there. And it's not just the, the minimal standards. So walls and ceilings, excuse me. The wall between an attached garage, some of this might be repetitive, but we're going to go through it anyways. The wall between an attached garage and the house living area is required to have minimum half-inch drywall. Most garages have a ceiling secured to the bottom quarter of the roof trusses or rafters, and that has to be at least half-inch, like we said before. If there is no ceiling, then the separating wall must be sheetrocked all the way up to the peak. There is a high incidence of fires started in the garage due to gasoline and other flammable materials often stored there. And either way, the intent is to create a half-inch drywall barrier between the garage and the house for fire protection. Only common walls. So I don't have control of my mouse today. Jim is running this. So only common walls thank you, Jim. Between garage and the house, not perpendicular walls, must meet this requirement. If a garage is detached but within 3 feet of the residence, any walls within 3 feet must have a half-inch drywall. When there is a living space above the garage, and the ceiling required ramps up to 5/8 type X fire rated drywall. Now, this brings up the question of breezeways. Sometimes you'll see a breezeway that's clearly part of the living space, and sometimes it's not. So if it's just a walk-in breezeway, it's not furnished, it's not heated, there's a door out of the garage going into the breezeway, and then another door into the house. I don't know if there's any, maybe the local municipalities, but how would you handle that? I personally think it doesn't hurt to have that garage party wall sheetrocked. A lot of times I don't see it. And, there's a lot of guys, a lot of inspectors, probably newer guys, at least what I'm seeing in the Facebook groups, who spend a ton of time trying to chase down a code confirmation on what they're calling. I don't give a rat's ass. If I think your house is going to work better with something, I don't have to prove with a code. No, I'm just going to put in a report. See, if somebody wants to argue that, then have them call me. But I'm not going to spend hours trying to find a specific line in the code book that backs me up. I'm just making a call. So,
there's a couple. I know Jim's got the slides. It says there's a couple of questions. I was laughing too. I saw, because we see the storm doors all the time. They'll put a storm door with a screen and leave the door wide open into the garage. That's a no-no. Because now there's no self-closing hinges on there. The other thing they talk about is, our fire damper registers allowed, like they put in apartments. If I see, at some point, they blow open and close. I'm assuming that's what he's talking about. I would say if there's a fire, I don't know, if there's a damper and it opens up and there's a car fire or fire in the garage, I would say no. Math. Gary knows about this, right? Gary, you're saying you have to do a separate inspection for a detached garage? They're saying, Mass, you have to do a separate inspection for any detached structure, right?
Yeah, separate detached structures, you're supposed to start a whole new inspection. So you're supposed to.
Can you put that in your report as you can't put it as just a garage, detached garage, and then you have to go through
I do. I do, but you know, they would prefer us to start an entire new inspection just on that one building.
Why? Because it's a separate structure?
Separate structure, separate building, separate, lots of times has its own electric panel, heat system. So they like started a whole new inspection.
Oh, more money, more money.
And there's another one in here too, Stan. It said new lithium battery chargers can catch on fire for the cars, which is true. That's why our city is not putting them in this new parking garage. They don't want them underneath the building because it's going to take a lot of water.
It's not only for cars though. A friend of mine lost his house due to a lithium battery for his lawnmower.
So like one of those 40-volt chargers.
Yeah, 40 volts, and he didn't have the self-closing door like I told him to, and door was open, and the fire went from garage right through the house.
So these are now modern, new technology that has to be thrown into the mix.
Yeah,
and they'll catch up for sure, because it's just going to take a couple houses to burn down because of all this stuff. But and I'm going to go off the subject a little bit, but same idea. So when I was a mitigator, but Scott is a radon mitigator still, if we put our pipe through a garage wall, party wall, we have to put a fire collar on it. All right, which is supposed to, if the pipe melts in a fire, this thing collapses and closes the hole. But do you see that when the plastic waste line comes to a garage?
Nope.
No. Is it because it's a bigger pipe? Heavier plastic? I don't know.
Same size sometimes, 3-inch, sometimes 4.
Well, it could be 3-inch, could be bigger. So, that's one thing I don't get into, but all these other things, if they're not in place, and, then realtors will go, well, this is a 1959 house, and I don't care. I'm going to tell them, bring this garage up to current fire safety standards if they want the safest house that they can. Now, I could walk away. I issue my report. I don't go back and make sure I'm not, they don't have to listen to me, but I will go to bed and I'll sleep good at night, having told them that those are the things that make your house unsafe and you should bring it up to current standards. I do the same with a deck. A lot of things, because it's an older house. So service entrance doors. This is the only place where any fire rating is specified. If the door is not solid wood or steel honeycomb and at least 1 3/8 inch thick, then it must have a 20-minute fire rating. Sometimes you can't tell. Like that door in the bottom is a fire rated door, but you'd have to go up and touch it to see if it's fiberglass or wood, because first time I've ever seen one like that. And then again, cutting the pet hole or the glass, you need to, that voids it. You can find the glass. It's expensive. I don't see too many glass. I see pet holes in there, but not the glass.
Or you see the cement, you'll see the asbestos panel on the back of a door, or they'll put sheet metal.
Yeah, I got that coming up too. And you know what? It might work a little bit, but there's also, it's an environmental issue as well. So bedroom egress cannot open into a garage. So I did this earlier this year, this condo. So 2 kids sleeping in a bedroom, and there's the second means of egress from the bedroom. Well, I shouldn't say that. The window was too high to get out, so that couldn't be a egress. So this was the other egress from the bedroom, and there's tools across it when you open that door, and it goes into a garage. So I don't know how my client was going to use that basement, but I put in the report that if it remains a bedroom, it can't. So I also bring up the issue of the environmental concerns regarding the asbestos, even though in that condition it's not an issue, but if you damage it, and do you know if that's a 20-minute fire rated door with that asbestos? I don't know that. So I always tell them to replace it with a fire rated door. This is a hollow core slab door. Gotta go. Next, Jim. These are service entrance door hinges, called self-closing hinges. There's a realtor I work with. He also flips. he bought a house that was on fire in Milford here and was renovating it. And they put a new garage door in, service entrance door, and they put 2 self-closing hinges on it. When the inspector came, the door didn't close 100%. It closed like 98%, but it didn't latch properly. So they had to put the 3rd one on, and it worked like a charm. So here we go with the ducts and other penetrations. So ducts in the garage and ducts penetrating the walls or ceiling separating the dwelling from the garage shall be constructed of a minimum number 26 gauge sheet steel, 1-inch minimum rigid non-metallic class O or class 1 ductboard, or maybe that's a 0, I don't know, or other approved materials, and shall not have openings into the garage. Now, I'm not telling you this and expecting you to pull out a gauge and chop a piece of the duct off and make sure you know it's 26-inch gauge. It's just to know that there are certain requirements. Class 0 or O is defined as air ducts and connectors having burning characteristics of 0. Class 1 means air ducts and connectors having a flame spread index of not over 25 without evidence of continued progressive combustion and a smoke developed index of not over 50. The duct boards are marked with their class ratings as an imprint or sticker on the board. Any type of register or grill in the ceiling of the garage that opens directly into the attic over the home is not allowed. We occasionally see vents retrofitted to provide ventilation to cool a hot garage in the summer, or to provide combustion air for a gas furnace or water heater in the garage. Combustion air can also be provided by a vent through the wall. Next, Jim. So on the left, okay. On the right, not okay.
So let's talk about that for a second. I understand the right, but the left, you're saying it's okay, but what about carbon monoxide?
How is it going to get in there? Oh, wait, you're going to go back to what's his name? The duct cleaning guy who said it can get sucked in there through the Victoria event?
Forget the duct cleaning guy. I did a condo complex in Rocky Hill. Every single unit, I actually did 2 within a month, and I got a call from the town of Rocky Hill from the building department telling me to stop calling out ductwork in the garage because the town says it's okay because of the thickness of the steel. So I said, okay, what about carbon monoxide? What about little joints and stuff like that? It doesn't have to be encapsulated? And they said no.
If anything, Jim, you want to insulate it and use some foil tape around it. That's what I would do. I think that would, I mean, the duct itself is fine. And then obviously a carbon monoxide detector in the house, and then you're covered.
Okay.
Other penetrations. Any openings around vents, pipes, ducts, cables, and wires at ceiling and floor must be sealed with an approved material to resist the free passage of flames and products of combustion. So that might be an answer to what you can do with the ductwork if you really wanted to get into that. The material filling the annular ring-shaped space around the penetration does not have to meet the ASTME E136 standards, whatever that is. Most homes have a half-inch drywall panel installed in the attic access opening, which is fine. But when you put something else in the opening, it must be equivalent to half-inch drywall, which has roughly a 20-minute fire resistance. The 1/4-inch plywood panel at most attic ladders does not meet that standard. There are several solutions. There are fire-rated attic ladders on the market, starting at about $800 an installation. Not cheap. They far exceed the equivalency requirements. Also, there are attic ladders that have a fire-rated retardant applied to the plywood face. Install a non-fire resistant attic ladder somewhere in the house instead of the garage. Some jurisdictions apparently allow modifications of the exposed surface of the ladder, such as applying a half-inch drywall to it or painting the wood with a fire-resistant paint. The application, I've never seen a can of paint marked fire-resistant, but maybe I haven't shopped enough. I don't know. The applications of half-inch drywall seems like a bad solution because the unit will likely end up sagging because of the weight and make it worse. basically. So
Yeah, a lot of the foam now in attics has a fire resistant paint that's sprayed over it too. You know, a lot of that closed cell foam, open cell foam.
so this is a house I did a while back where the plywood's on there and the opening's a mess. And if you went up into the attic, this is what was there. So I told them, I don't know what your plans are for the house. And I know that that pull down makes it very easy to access that nice space up there for even storage, but you got to rock that wall all the way up to the peak. So again, even though I said that specifically, I also tell them to bring that garage up to current fire safety standards. Here's that sticker that certifies that the plywood used for the door panel is treated by Hoover PyroGuard 117 POR 7003. So you could try and find that on those doors. But even if that was on that door, that opening was so bad around that door that that really wouldn't make a whole lot of difference. So now we're going to talk about garage receptacles. Obviously, there's been a big change lately in where GFIs are supposed to be included in garages, which is everywhere now. But receptacles in the garage were first required to be GFI protected by the 1978 edition of the National Electrical Code. Initially, an exception was made for receptacle outlets that are not readily accessible, and they have 6 foot 8 inches or above, and receptacle outlets for dedicated appliances that are not easily movable, such as a freezer, refrigerator, or mounted sprinkler control panel. Then in 2008, they eliminated those exceptions, and now all garage receptacles are required to be GFI protected. The mandate for ground fault circuit interrupter protection for receptacles in wet areas around the home began in 1971 edition of the NEC, and at first only exterior receptacles and ones near a swimming pool. As the NEC has updated with new additions every 3 years, the locations required have been expanded or tweaked with almost every cycle since then. Does the rest of this apply to the garage? So the state of Florida, for example, did not make the 2011 NEC effective until mid-2015. So sometimes jurisdictions are behind, but it doesn't stop you from going in a garage today and telling somebody that your garage will be safer if you install GFIs at all these outlets, and that's what I recommend. So, you know, I've said this 100 times before. You protect your ass, and you will protect your client's ass. So those changes are in effect now. Doesn't apply to a house that was built 20 years ago, but it doesn't hurt to tell them that you can make your garage safer. Okay, Jim. So GFI protection for door openers. Though it is not readily accessible, a garage door opener outlet must be GFI protected today in current code. In the past, the NEC had exceptions for specific receptacles and outlets. Previously, if the outlet wasn't readily accessible, it did not need to be GFI compliant. So do the ceiling outlets have to be GFI compliant? Yes. All right, but they actually have to be located on the wall. So the buttons have to be within hand reach, even though they're protecting the outlet in the ceiling.
The reset.
What's that?
So if they trip on the ceiling, you reset them on the wall.
Correct.
Okay.
And they need to be arc fault protected as well. So, and this goes for sump pumps too, and any other thing that you're not checking every day or not in your face every day. So Leviton has an outlet with an audible alarm. It's self-testing. Our Leviton presentation, I didn't even know, it was about a year ago, I guess. He went into all this. I have never, or I have yet to see one of these in place anyplace. But I recommend to people, if they do their sump pump or their door opener, that they should get one of these.
What they
Do you test the GFIs in a garage if it's connected to a refrigerator?
Well, you can get to it. I'll test every one I can, but it's usually
I do, but you can also, well, then you got to wait until that refrigerator settles down a little bit before you turn the power back on.
Yeah. And what if it doesn't reset? That's happened to me twice.
I know, and I've had that happen to me too.
Well, Jim, sometimes it might be, we've seen it before where they have a GFI that's really either on a breaker or on a bathroom or something else. So they'll put that GFI really doesn't have to be a GFI. It could be a regular outlet. So I kind of look for it. I've had it like, oh, you trip it and then you got to go look for it. But I was just going to say, I can't remember.
Okay, Jim. And then, there's every other electrical issue that you can imagine can be in a garage. This is one picture. Take a look at that mess. Those electrical boxes don't have sides on them. They're wire nuts together. I don't know what that wire is just coming across the paint can there. It might be an extension cord or something. But so that's a freaking mess right there. But so you got to look for all that other stuff too, besides what we're talking about today. So garage bay door safety. An imbalanced garage door can close accidentally and injure users. Heavy garage doors can damage vehicles and property, plus the garage door components, especially the motor, wear out faster and can become damaged. There are still manually operated garage bay doors. These doors still require safety features that we can call out. So if I let a manually operated garage door go and it continues to fall, I will tell them that they should have somebody come out and adjust the spring tension cables, all that good stuff. Balancing a garage door is necessary for safety and for the smooth long-term operation of the garage door. An imbalanced garage door either slams shut or rapidly opens. Whatever type of garage door you have, torsion springs or extension springs, balancing garage door is a DIY project that usually takes less than an hour to complete. And a balanced garage door is one that opens and closes easily. When a balanced garage door is temporarily detached from its operating mechanism and left halfway open, the door maintains equilibrium. It does not close or open on its own. So I get a lot of, I don't disconnect the operator, but in manually operated doors, I'm going to say probably 75% of them will close on their own. So the purpose of the garage door cables is to connect the spring system to the door. There are two primary types of garage door spring systems. The first uses a torsion spring and the second uses an extension spring. In a torsion spring system, the springs are located on the wall above the door with the metal bar passing through it and uses one cable on each side. In an extension system, this one has both, are two cables on either side. One passes through the spring while the other lifts the door. This cable uses a pulley to transfer lifting force from the door opener to the door. Okay, Jim. Balancing a garage door. Now, we're not going to do this, obviously, but if you want to tell your people how to do it, I'm not even sure I would want you to do that because there's some liability involved in there. But balancing a garage door by adjusting the torsion spring is an important task that ensures the longevity of the door and prevents damage to the door. The process involves loosening the set screw, winding the springs, tightening the set screw, and testing the door for proper balance. The number of turns required to balance the door depends on the size of the door and the weight of the door panel. On average, a 7-foot tall garage door's torsion spring, if completely unwound, will require 8 full turns to bring it to correct level of tension or balance. It's important to note that adjusting the torsion spring can be dangerous and should be done with caution. It is recommended to seek professional help if you're not familiar with that process. And balancing is key for a well-functioning garage door. Here's how you ensure your garage door is perfectly balanced. Disconnect the opener. All right, we'll skip this, Jim. We just talked about that. My bad. So extension cords feeding door openers. You're not supposed to do that. I call that out every time. You got to get an outlet there, even though it's up in the ceiling. The big debate on how to test garage reversing safeties. This has been ongoing for a long time. Okay, Jim. I don't know if I want to go through all this, but part of the debate is manufacturers say put a 2x4 at the bottom of the door and let the door strike that. If that door doesn't want to stop, it could cause damage. I would rather push up on the door, and if it's pushing against me too hard, I'm just going to let it go and tell somebody it needs to be checked by a professional. I've had the arm pull off a door when I tested it, even like that. When I looked at it, I should have looked at it first. There were 150 screw holes in the wood that was holding that arm to the door. So this was an ongoing problem. I put it back together. I got a call that evening saying that when the folks came home, the thing came apart again. So I had a partner at the time. He and I went back, and let me tell you, a tornado can blow that house apart, and that arm would still be mounted to that door when we got done. So we fixed it, and then I had an intern test a door like I do. I think he pushed up a little too hard, and the sprocket came flying off the door opener. So we got the door to close, and I told the realtor, and I was expecting a phone call, and I didn't get one. So that tells me that was an ongoing problem. And so those are the kind of things that, if they happen, or like the GFI that doesn't reset, these are things we do, and they may not function afterwards, and then we may have to talk our way out of it. But it's important to know if they're functioning or not, in my opinion.
Just to add to what you said, Stan, that's exactly the way I do it. And in some cases, some of those cheap cold play doors, you know, they're you could tell a real thin door. When I put my hand on it, I actually bent the bottom one.
Yeah.
It bent on me, and I had to replace it. So if I meet a lot of resistance, I let it go and call it out, because I have bent them. I mean, some of the bigger doors, stronger doors, I'm not worried about. But there's a lot of those thin, uninsulated doors that people put in, and those will bend real easy. They're already probably bent. You see with the arm down.
If I see those doors with kinks and dings in them, I don't even test them anymore. I just put a note in the report: the door's damaged, and they didn't want to cause further damage. So here's the 2x4 underneath the garage door, and here's a method of adjusting that closing force, opening force. It's kind of simple. You got to work at it a little bit. I'll point that out if the opener wasn't working right. It should be tested monthly, right, and adjusted as needed. And then photo beam reverse, kind of simple to check. They could be dirty. They could have light reflecting in them to stop them from working. They could be blocked by something. You have to check both sides.
Bent.
Next, Jim. The height is kind of a concern in some cases. I don't really check that unless they're like too high. And then
you see them sometimes on the ceiling, right
there on the right. Is it?
Yeah.
Right. You know, like if you're doing a house that's 10 years old and you can't find photo beam, you better look up, because it's there someplace.
I see that all the time. Crazy.
So that's not good. And then combustion appliances in garages. You know, it's most of the time it's going to be gas, right? And the furnace should be 18 inches above the floor, any combustible compartment, to reduce the risk of igniting gas fumes that might originate from vehicles or other sources in the garage. And good air circulation around the appliances, with the exception of the condensing units, which are providing their own. And so you got to be careful with that kind of stuff, and you got to know what your local building department requires, or you don't have to know, but you should know. Next, Jim. So in summary, for those things, most garages, because of a variety of ages and of the home we inspect, will not be 100% compliant to these requirements. I point out the deficiencies and make a general statement that the garage should be brought up to current fire and electrical safety requirements for attached garages. So garage floors. Garage slabs can be safety concerns if settlement cracks develop that become tripping hazards, create a condition that can compromise the structure, or cause the rise of a doorway to become excessive. Potential structural issues. If that slab there is allowing that wall to move, if it's being undermined, you know, it could be the slab itself doesn't even need to be there. That is not a structural component, but there is a possibility with damage to slab that you can have some structural concerns. So you got to kind of figure that out if you see something like this. And they also can be, that's a pretty significant crack right there, but they can be tripping hazards. So it is a safety concern.
And you shouldn't store wood in a garage either.
Well, that's for another webinar. If that little piece of that wood, whatever you want to call it, step down there was not there, that would be excessive rise into the garage. So sometimes slabs in that area can settle as well. You know, I don't know about you guys, I don't even have to measure anything. You just walk over something and you can kind of tell that, you know, you're used to picking up your foot so high. If it's too high or too short, you kind of feel it. So here's something that I'm going to say, in 37 years, I might have saw a dozen wood floors in garages. They're usually detached garages. So can a wood framed floor support a car? So generally, yes, it could potentially support a car, but there are important considerations to keep in mind. So weight capacity. Typically, a car weighs around 3,000 pounds. Therefore, your wood floor needs to be able to support this concentrated weight. The International Building Code specifies that garage floors should be capable of supporting at least 3,000 pound vehicle. Well, that makes sense, right? One car garage. Go ahead, Jim. So live load, dead load. When designing a wood floor for a garage, you need to account for both live load, the weight of the car, and dead load, the weight of the structure itself. A common approach is to consider 50 pounds per square foot live load, plus 150% of the highest wheel weight of the vehicle that is most likely to be in a garage, placed anywhere on that floor. And add this to the dead loads. Keep in mind that a 2x6 wood floor may not hold up well over time. You might want to consider pouring concrete over the top of the wood floor to enhance its strength and durability. Well, the floor is not just the issue if it's not on the ground. You know, you'll see in some pictures that are coming up. So modern cars have catalytic converters that generate heat. This heat can potentially start a wooden floor on fire, especially if it's gas or oil soaked. Cars can also leak fluids, which can further damage the wood. Additionally, consider carbon monoxide emissions. If you open the garage door before starting a car, CO can settle and pose health risks. Lateral bracing and shear stress of the wall supporting the floor are also crucial factors. In summary, you need more than standard tables to design this safely. Consult an engineer. And then moisture protection and insect protection for the wood. Next. So in conclusion, while it's technically possible to use a wood floor to support a car, it's essential to consult with a professional engineer to ensure the safety and structural integrity. All right, Tim. So the last one I saw, again, I don't think the people that own the house were using it for a car, but I had to stress the point to the kid that was buying the house. So here's the wood floor. If you look at the patch in the front, that was probably rotted out, and they had to make a repair. The support on the side, and it's hard to see that line, but that was way out of, it was leaning badly. This is the foundation down here on the bottom that was towards the house. And then just a couple of wood posts at the center. They weren't even fastened. And I couldn't get in there close enough to see if there was any kind of footings underneath that thing. So I told them, this is now, from this day on, a glorified shed for you. Do not put your car in there unless you want to get somebody to come in and go over it and tell you what you got to do to make it safe. So I know you all seen garages like this, probably some that you couldn't even get into. You have to, today with pictures, it's easy to document, but you have to, in my opinion, state in your report that the garage was filled with stored items and it restricted your inspection. And if you want to get even more detailed, then tell them what you couldn't see. Sill plates, base of the wall, couldn't get to outlets, couldn't determine if there were GFIs present because we couldn't even see the outlets. But it's very important with any component to indicate what you cannot do. So to fill out the time, I got to stretch this out 15 minutes. So I did a home inspection last year for a guy who makes hot rod sports cars. Scott, that place behind Van Wilgens, are you familiar with it?
Yeah, but he's got a, yeah.
Prove something. So the kid's a little bit of a hot shit. I didn't take a picture of the car he came in. I should have. It was pretty impressive. So he told me it took him a year to find this house. And I said, well, I know it's kind of a bad market, but he said I had specific use for the house. So he's got 18 cars he's going to put in the basement of this house. All right. So if you go in the garage and you look at the back, the top right picture, he's going to blow all that doorway out, those walls out. They're coming out. These finished areas underneath here are going to be taken out. And Jim, go to the picture of the house. No, back. Yeah. He's going to put a lift in the original garage and lift cars up into that room up on top on the main floor there. So he's got, I think he said 16 or 18 cars are going to go into that garage or basement. And I told him, I said, you know, there are fire safety. I said, the cars aren't going to have gas or oil in them. He goes, oh yeah, I'm going to be like moving around, taking them out. I said, then you need to know what's going to be required for fire safety for the entire house now, not just a party wall. And, you know, I'm sure you all had made a statement to somebody and you know that they didn't even pay attention to what you said. Well, he just kind of walked away and, you know, not my monkey's not my circus, but at least I gave him some advice. And you also have to be careful. So is this a barn or garage? It was built, and the house built in 1857. Now think about that. What's that? 1819? Yeah, 150 some odd years old. And I mean, it lost its shape. It really wasn't in bad shape. They asked me if they can park a car in there. I said, well, you probably could, but I don't know if I'd really want to. I'd want to, you know, get this thing structurally sound. The mortise and tendon and that center picture on the bottom was starting to separate, even though there's a pin in there. Water is leaking through the exterior wall. See the water stains. The ceiling, that I forgot what size that beam was, but that spanned across that whole structure and it was sagging pretty bad. Next page, Jim. The stairway to the second floor. I mean, I walked on that, but that's not too safe. And then water was leaking in at the sills, and the sills, it was funny, down not quite the center, it was all rotted. And then if you looked at the exterior wall there, you know, there's earth and vegetation and leaves and crap piled up against there, just soaking all of that. So I would have called that a barn. They wanted to convert it to a garage, and I said, well, then there's a lot of work you got to do to get in here. So you can't just assume that what you're seeing is going to stay that way or be used the same way. And, you know, protect yourself. So the garage, it's always safety first, right? The garage is jam-packed full of potential safety issues. Take your time, be thorough, be smart, document everything. Cover your butt and you'll cover your client's butt. I think that's it, huh? So
couple questions. Couple things, Stan. Can you talk a little bit about safety protection on oil tanks in a garage? You know, talk a little bit about what you should see with that. And you know, sometimes you'll see a meter in there. Sometimes you'll see a water, you know, the water main will come through the side of the garage.
Well, the tanks have to have ballisters in front of ballards, right?
Bullards, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever seen a water meter in a garage or anything like that. You're talking about gas meters?
I've seen gas meters. Sometimes you'll see a water line, a water main, or a water line coming through. Most of the time they're tucked away, but it's more the tanks. You know,
but in an unheated garage, you got water running through.
Yeah,
well, you want to protect everything, right?
Yeah, sometimes it's wrapped with heat tape or.
And I think when you're in the business long enough, some of these things just pop out at you, and you go, "Oh, that should have some kind of protection." If you feel that way, just say it. That's my opinion. You know, if you think something's wrong, make a statement, make a comment, or as we call today, a narrative, and, you know, just pass it along. It doesn't hurt.
Well, another thing, Stan, when we go into a garage, what are some of the hot spots that you see as far as termite, carpenter ants? I mean, not so much, depends on the age of the structure, powder post. What do you
So-
when you first go in, if you could just talk a little bit about that?
We will. I didn't put that in here on purpose, or the roof or siding, because this was supposed to be garage safety. But as long as we need some time, got to chew up some time. So you find, to me, I find a lot of termite damage in a lot of garages. All right, because most of the time the wood is basically sitting right on the ground or not too far up from it. So the center post between two garage doors, the door jambs where they come down to the ground, sill plates. And for some reason in garages, and maybe because we can't see in a house, but a garage is an excellent opportunity to see how that termite damage that started at the sill can go up the stud, can go up. Well, it's a siding in a garage that you can see if it's unfinished, but that could be the sheathing of a house. So the good thing about an unfinished garage is that you get to see that whole structure from the inside, and it's, I'm going to say, kind of hard to miss unless there's a lot of stored items in there.
The other thing I see a lot too, I wouldn't say a lot, I see it every once in a while, is the attached garage with no access through the house. And how many times my customers are surprised that when they're looking at the house, they don't realize that. And I show up and tell them, the only way to get into the garage is through the garage door. That's
Do you
it.
think a good proportion of those are add-ons?
I probably have to assume so. Yeah, I see them a lot in like West Hartford. Where the lots are a little tight, and they'll put a one car on the right side of the house, but there's no access into the living room,
Right.
or rear room, dining room. And my clients always want to know, can I cut a hole in, for a door? And I'm like, yeah, it's just got to be fire rated.
Well, and then it also depends on how high that floor level is to the
Right.
garage floor, and how far out stairs have to come, or you can't get the car in there. So that could be another reason. It's not something that, I would talk about it. I don't think it's a defect if you can't get in the garage from the house. I think it's just more important to make sure that party wall is fire rated. And,
Exactly.
but people are going to ask you questions that you have to have an answer for. You can't just walk away from it. At least I don't. Not party inspection. Sorry, I'm going. I try to appease them. An attorney told me, if people like you, if they kind of befriend you, whether you're a home inspector or a contractor, then if something goes wrong, they're less likely to really make your life miserable. But if you're a prick, they're going to, come at you with both barrels. So I try to answer every question, because look it, if I had somebody that knows technology come into my house and I had to ask them about all the shit I don't know about here, and they didn't want to answer me, I would never use that guy again. So just appease them, spend an extra 15 minutes, and you make a friend. Maybe get another referral. So, and then cuss them out when you're leaving.
I think we did really good tonight. Go ahead, Scott.
Can you just talk about some of the things that you have seen over the years when you go in that create openings in the firewall and the ceiling? Some of the things that you see, whether the door opener brackets, and and do you call them all those?
Yes. Yep. If they cut out sheetrock to mount the brackets, yes. If somebody ran electrical upstairs and had to run it through the garage and they cut a bunch of little holes and either patched them but didn't tape them, I point that out. Any breach in the wall or the ceiling, I make a note of for them. Some are easy to fix, some are not.
Even the air conditioning from the living room going into the garage, I see that a lot.
Yes.
Well, not tiny little holes that where screws were at one time, but if it's significant, I'm going to tell them that it needs to be sealed up. again, for my liability and their safety. And, you know, I would love to be able to go back to somebody's houses and see what was actually taken care of. I'm not even talking about negotiating. I'm talking about getting fixed. You can negotiate $5,000 and put it in your pocket and never fix anything. So I would love to see how much people pay attention to what we tell them and how much they fix. Several times I go back to a house and, you know, I might not remember I was there before. I'll go back to my report and see what I report to, you know, if I recognize it and what I reported last time, but it doesn't happen often to remember. Not after 37 years. I don't know what I did yesterday. So
Well,
are we on time?
We're good on time. We met all our requirements for all our states, so I think we're going to wrap it. Does anybody else have any questions?
What about PVC drain lines?
You mean like on a HVAC system or something?
It's there's a couple of cheap metal. Wait a minute, just read a couple here. Gary said, let's start with the last one he put. What about PVC drain lines going through the garage? Are you talking about the drain lines, Gary, for washer? Like they'll put the washer pan and they'll run that drain line down.
That wasn't me that typed that one. Somebody else did.
Oh, whoever did that. Okay, that's what I'm thinking. Is it for the and then a car that ran through the wall?
That was me.
Yeah.
Talking about holes in the wall.
That'll put a kink in the party wall.
And what about the sheetrock underneath the? Every once in a while, you get a bump out in the garage.
Yeah.
The sheetrock underneath. To
The
make
cantilevers that come into the garage from the house. Yeah, and it's
I
white
always look at that.
underneath. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. I don't see it often, but I do peek under there. That's for sure.
Yep.
And they're wide
And
open.
that's usually where the pipes are found too.
Yep.
And that, like a lot of times, that's an addition or an expansion in the house, and that definitely, clearly, was not done with a permit, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's usually the washer dryer room is right there.
Yep. Yeah,
Well, I think we talked about it earlier. Is it Paul? Peter, is that you? It just says P. I don't know who P is, but PS, what about PVC drain lines? And I'm going to go with my, as a radon mitigator too. I put fire collars and I never see them with the PVC drain lines. I put a fire collar. It's supposed to be really on both sides technically, but I put a fire collar that if it heats up, it melts and closes that breach, that hole. So that's kind of, they don't do it, the plumbers, and they shouldn't. I don't even think they'll put fire caulk or they'll use fire foam, and the guys will go, oh, that's good. But technically, any pipe through the garage, I put fire collars. I still put fire collars. I don't know anybody else that does that. But I think Stan talked about the fire collars early on. I think that's what you mean, right?
You know, it's tough to make a call, and then, you know, even if you say, well, have a professional come in and evaluate. And I remember one time there was a floor joist that I could put my fist through from termite damage or some kind of damage, and I said it should be sistered, and they brought somebody in and said, no, that's no problem. And then they had to call me and tell me that the contractor said that he didn't think it was an issue. And I said, well, you know, get that in writing, because I already wrote my opinion. So even when you recommend a professional, it doesn't mean it's going to get done the right way, because let's face it, we're out there picking on stuff that was done by other professions. Right. And you have to be in the trades to understand why sometimes things aren't done by the book. And then you got to look at it and say, is this safe? Is this going to last? Or is this just a piece of garbage repair? But to think that every house, to call out everything in a house because it's not by the book, you're never going to find a completely built by the book house. Just not going to happen. So the garage, though, to me is an underrated structure, and I think it should have its own section in the standards myself, but just for clarification and direction. That's all.
Agreed.
But when you know me long enough, you'll know that I'm not a big fan of the standards anyways, or licensing for why they think they needed to do it. But that'll be another webinar. You won't get credit for it either, but we're going to have a discussion. All right, gents,
Okay.
It's 8 o'clock.
We're good. I'm going
Thanks
to
for
end our
attending.
seminar.
Great job, Stan.
Thank you, Stan.